Google called. I remember the interview process took 6 months. I flew out to California 3 times. I had 24 interviews.
24?
24 interviews.
How many people were they at the time?
3,000 when I started interviewing, and by the time I started the job, 5,000 people.
Laszlo was Senior Vice President of People Operations and a member of Google's management team, growing the company from 6,000 to 72,000 employees. During his tenure, Google was recognized over 150 times as an exceptional employer.
The single thing that had frustrated me the most in my career was the disconnect between the values that leaders talked about and what they actually lived.
Did you even realize, how big of a job you were in?
No. Oh my God, no. I do remember being incredibly nervous when I went to the executive team and said, okay, look, GPA is not predictive. Where you went to school is not predictive. SAT score is not predictive. And therefore, we should remove all those things from the hiring process. I mean, it was risky, right? I could have been fired.
Yeah. From Google CHRO to founder. What's that like?
I had my first job when I was 14. Didn't know about corporate America. My family came to the U.S. as refugees. Our first deal was a $50,000 revenue deal, which for a brand new startup, that's a good sized deal. And we were looking at it going, I can't remember the last time at Google a number this small came across my desk.
Being the CHRO, I literally think it is the hardest C-level job there is.
Having been a CEO, I can tell you it is much harder.
What's the vision for a CHRO that's powerful and effective?
1 are analytical skills. Number 2, and then the third is...
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Truth Works. I'm Jessica Neal. I'm here with my partner in crime for a couple episodes, Bob Sutton. And hi, Bob. How are you?
I am good. I'm good.
Okay. And we have a wonderful guest today who is a friend of mine and a friend of Bob's. And his name is Laszlo Bock. And I'm sure many of our listeners know him already. But he is the father of people analytics. He was the head of HR at Google and became famous from that. He wrote a wonderful book, Work Rules, which Bob just hold up. He was the founder of a company called Humu, which I personally know a little bit about since I got involved with Humu with you, Laszlo, as well. But welcome, Laszlo. We're so excited to have you and talk to you about many things. Tell everybody what I didn't tell them about you that they need to know about you.
Well, first, it's so fun to be with you guys. It's always great to see friends, and you two are just wonderful, wonderful, super fun people. So I'm happy to be here. I guess the only other thing you left out was that I was briefly ranked number 1 in the world for daily kills in Assassin's Creed.
I forgot about that. You're
pretty significant in history.
You're a gamer, but one game in particular. Assassin's Creed.
No, lots of games, but that was the only one where
that was the one that you got really good at.
Yeah, but I have an unorthodox approach to playing video games that are ranked in that I don't hire people to play them for me. So that's a little unusual in the tech industry these days, but it's I'm old school in that sense.
Okay, so you actually play it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's weird, right?
I forgot that stat about you. That's a good one. And you're a father.
Yep. 3 amazing daughters, the oldest of whom just graduated college and started a new job. And she actually, though, she's in New York City, she actually asked that I not comment on her LinkedIn posts and not say anything because and this is very real. She doesn't want anyone to have the impression that I helped her.
Right.
Kind of with her. Right. And in fact, I did not. I probably hurt her in my efforts to coach her. So I can't reveal her identity, but she's in New York. And then a daughter who's about to be a junior in college and a daughter who's about to be a junior in high school. And,
you're going to be an empty nester soon.
Yeah, you're that close.
Yeah.
Well, and that's why I'm pleased to announce in 2 years I'll be starting my new podcast.
Well, you have your first 2 guests right here.
Exactly.
We'll be on it.
Well, just having had children who are a little bit older, it's amazing how often they'll come back for a few months and then leave again. So don't close down shop yet.
Well, that's my hope. That's my hope. And actually, the middle one's spending the summer at your institution, so she's having a great time there working with one.
Oh yeah. So. My 32-year-old daughter is going to be a master's student at Stanford next year, and she lives in San Francisco, so we're going to be seeing a lot of her since our house is close to campus.
I love that. Well, Laszlo, you have such a you just have had such an amazing career journey. You've done so many things. I want you to take people through it for a little bit, but I personally love, just how you got started and then how you ended up at Google. And then I think everybody's just very curious about like Google in the early days, and you were there doing all of this and innovating in the people space, which really hadn't really been innovated in. So tell us a little bit about like your early career and then early days at Google.
So my early career was, like, if you looked at my resume, a total mess, and that's why it's not detailed on LinkedIn. I had my first job when I was 14. Didn't know about corporate America. My family came to the U.S. as refugees, so we didn't know like about the big companies and you go to business school and all this kind of stuff. We didn't know like, what colleges were ranked certain ways. And so I was lucky enough to get mentored by a few people who eventually led me to business school and then to McKinsey & Company, where I did consulting. And after about 4 years of that, I realized that the single thing that had frustrated me the most in my career was the disconnect between the values that leaders talked about and what they actually lived. And it drove me crazy. It just bugged me. It felt like hypocrisy. And
drives me crazy too.
Well, you're like one of the most values-driven people I know. I mean, it must.
Yeah.
But after 4 years of consulting, I decided to go into HR. And I remember my cohort, there were 24 of us that started in that office. And by the time I was leaving, we were down to 4 of us left because it was this up or out culture. And
McKinsey really does that. 5 years at McKinsey is a long time.
Yeah.
It's a long time. But they thought I was nuts. They were like, why are you going to HR? You're throwing your career away. And my calculus was, well, I'd never be a CEO, or a VP of strategy, or, a big fancy venture capitalist or anything, but I'd get to work on the issues I cared about the most. And I was living in Connecticut, and the 2 best academy HR companies at the time were Pepsi and GE. Mm-hmm. So I cold called a bunch of people at both. One person at GE got back to me, and 6 weeks later, I started a job in GE Capital.
And that's when GE was good.
Right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like they were like cutting edge for people's strategy.
They were like the place to learn.
Yeah.
Both not just HR, but to become a CEO. Like they famously were this school for CEOs. I've been lucky. I've been able to get into companies just before the brand kind of.
Well, no correlation with you, of course.
I don't know. Maybe it was my fault, or maybe because I left. I don't know. So I spent 3 years at GE Capital, and in 2 different HR jobs in 2 different businesses, and then Google called. And I remember the interview process took 6 months. I flew out to California 3 times. I had 24 interviews. And
24?
24 interviews.
How many people were they at the time?
Like 3,000.
3,000.
So there were 3,000 when I started interviewing, and by the time I started the job, 5,000 people. So that's how quickly things were growing.
Jeez Louise. Yeah.
So Laszlo, did you report to Shona Brown? Was she there that early, or was
She got there a year or 2 before me, and I reported to her for a year. And then Eric asked me to report directly to him, Eric Schmidt, the CEO. Yeah.
So Shona Brown was a PhD student in our program, and a sign of how long I've known her, I once loaned her $500, and she's probably a billionaire by now. She did.
Okay, good.
She did, but I loaned her $500. So that's how long I've known Shona.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, she was fantastic. So she
was amazing.
Before I started, and actually even when I started, the hiring was super focused on pedigree. And so the story I was told was when they went looking for a head of HR, they wanted somebody who was a Rhodes Scholar and a McKinsey partner and a PhD from Stanford or Harvard. And Shona was all those things.
Yeah, Shona was all 3 of those things. That's right.
But then she would only, I was told, she would only take the job on the condition that she actually got business operations, got to create and stand up what actually was one of the first business operations teams on the planet too. This was right around when like Cerberus was building up their internal operations group, and people didn't really have biz ops teams. So she kind of pioneered that. And then, then I came on and, got to play in that sandbox.
Yeah. So then you start and it's like 5,000 people. Is it just chaos or like what is it like?
Yeah. I mean, yes and no. There was already a lot of discipline around certain things. Like, for example, on the product side, no product launch. This was actually super instructive for me. One of the ways Larry and Sergey maintained control of the company as it scaled, and I don't mean in a nefarious sense. I mean, one of the paradoxes of becoming an executive is your voice carries more weight, but you feel less of it.
Yeah.
You feel like people aren't listening. It takes longer. And so you have to have these kind of choke points, I believe, to manage the business. So Larry always had to approve product launches and hires. So no one could get hired without his personal sign off.
I remember this.
Yeah. So there were structures where things were very tightly managed. But then underneath it, complete chaos. In a very positive sense, though. People could do whatever they wanted. There was a tremendous amount of trust. Like there were not headcount budgets. There were not financial budgets. There were kind of no controls. Like you kind of go start up an office if you have a good idea and you're excited and you're an engineer. You go start an office. So it was pretty amazing to join that. And then underneath that, though, there were some things like within the hiring process, for example. There were two things that on day one I was like, this feels wrong to me. And so there were sort of some ingrained bad habits on top of some incredibly good instincts and practices.
Explain those to us.
So one of them was the way hiring worked for almost my entire time there was the senior executive team. And so there'd be maybe a dozen of us. And at any given time, there'd be 3 or 4 of us on the product sales and G&A side, general and administrative side, and then 4 engineering execs. And we'd split into 2 groups, and every week we'd review every offer before it got extended. And so...
how many offers was that like a week?
I think it peaked at about 350. Yeah. It was pretty fun.
Yeah.
When I started, it was probably around 40 or 50 a week, and then it climbed quite a bit.
Yeah.
So there was one candidate, and every candidate that was reviewed. So by the time you get to this step, you have a 40 to 80 page dossier on every candidate, right? And it's where they went to college, where they went to grad school, what their grades were, their SAT score, detailed references, the results of the average candidate had sort of 15 to 20 interviews. So all that feedback, hiring committee feedback, hiring committee review feedback, backdoor references, which is, you give us your references and then we work our own network to figure out what you're really saying. So this huge dossier, and this candidate comes in, green light across the board, Stanford master's degree, Stanford undergrad, straight A's, high SAT scores, and it was a woman candidate. And her packet gets reviewed. This is on my first day, like literally 5 hours into the job. And one of the people reviewing, one of the other senior executives, looked at it and said, "Oh, this person majored in human biology. Only idiots study human biology," and rejected the candidate. And on top of that, right, like there were very few black candidates. It was disproportionately male, all those things. So that was like one thing where I was like, this does not look good. This does not feel good. And that then turned into a kind of secret 2.5-year project to change the way hiring worked called Project Cerebro, where the cool thing there was to make sure it was a valid scientific experiment, we actually hired 200 people that Google had rejected to see how they performed. So it was super fun.
How did you get away with that? Like, how did you do it?
So the short version is we developed a bunch of scientific research led by a guy named Todd Carlisle, Dr. Todd Carlisle, who went on to be a head of HR a couple times after Google. But we figured out a few questions we could ask that predict how someone would perform at Google, we thought. But in order to actually test whether they're predictive, the problem is you've trained it on people who are already hired by Google. So what you need is people who are not hired by Google. So every candidate for most of the jobs on the online form had to answer 5 to 10 questions, and that generated a Cerebro score. Anybody who got above a 70, we should hire. And so what we did was we found there were 2 job categories where we were hiring thousands of people a year. And because the way hiring worked, you would just interview, but you wouldn't really interview the people for your team, right? So this was software engineering and online sales. So lots of people, managers and individual employees interviewing, a bunch of people coming in. They all start on different teams. So we decided to hire 100. Well, I decided. I didn't tell anybody. So Todd knew and one other person knew. And we said, okay, find people. We're going to find 100 people in engineering and 100 people in online sales who had Cerebro scores above 70 and were rejected by our hiring process.
Okay. And so mostly they're rejected because of pedigree or?
All kinds of reasons. The interview didn't go well, interview feedback. I did not formally look at why they were rejected. Mm-hmm. But remember too, the hiring process was a lot more biased at the time. So there was a lot of,
Yeah.
So that's one of the most beautiful. First of all, you're overcoming what they call, survivor bias, which is that you think you have all the best people because you don't look at the rejects. But the other thing, and we've talked about elements about how you got rid of friction in the hiring process at Google before. In fact, I talk about them over and over again. But that I did not realize the degree to which you got ahead by doing constructive defiance, because to me, and the beautiful thing is at Google probably it was okay in some way to do that in that era, wasn't it? No. How much trouble would you have gotten in
maybe
really?
Not if he was an engineer, but maybe not with hiring because hiring was so sacred. It was right. It was kind of sacred for Larry.
So
you didn't get fired though for that.
No, but so the trick was once you hire these people, you need to wait 1.5 years to see how they perform, right? And you can't just say because the first you're acculturating, you're getting used to it, you move teams a little bit. And I do remember being incredibly nervous when I went to the executive team and said, okay, we no longer need to, and it wasn't just me. At this point, it was Todd and some other analysts who'd had the statistics and data behind it as well. They were like, look, GPA is not predictive. Where you went to school is not predictive. SAT score is not predictive. And therefore, we should remove all those things from the hiring process.
Yeah.
And then the question was, well, how do you know? I said, well... And that was it. I mean, it was risky, right? I could have been fired.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
But to your point about
what was the response when you told them how? What they'd say?
Well, so it was I'd say grudging acceptance.
Okay.
Well, that's not bad.
Yeah.
No, it was. And we implemented everything at the 90% level. So, for example, the marketing team kind of still said well, I don't care. I'm still going to look at where they went to college. Okay, well, for the other 90%, we're not going to find that's victory. But it was, I had the benefit of it being a data-driven culture. So if you showed up with enough data and you argued it, and by the way, showed it to lots of people, right? Transparency was a big part of it, not just the executive team, but engineers and all the hiring committees and things like that. There was a whole roadshow of tear apart our methodology, say what, go after it. And they kind of concluded, okay, this is actually, you guys are right.
Yeah.
And so we got rid of that.
I love that, Laszlo. That is a fantastic story. And, I mean, it just, pedigree doesn't matter. Your test scores don't matter. And we've learned that over time. And I mean, the thing that I love about that story is that you weren't just going qualitatively saying, I think this is wrong. You did a whole test and you came with data and proved it. Yeah.
Well, I sorry, Bob.
So pedigree doesn't matter for actual performance, but it sure does matter for opportunity.
Sure.
And it is interesting because the Stanford arrogance you talked about with hum bio and looking you in biology, looking down on this so-called easy major, it's like that in every system. And I take great pride in, I think I have the lowest high school grade point average of any Stanford professor, 1.9 after my junior year.
Wow.
And I went to junior college, and when my department chair found out that after I had accepted the offer, he was horrified. It was hidden in my appointment package.
Right.
I love it. Oh, wait. So two things. One is that's amazing. And I'm glad you got that offer before the days of organizations rescinding offers.
Right.
Number two, I don't know anything about hum bio, so I assume it's as good a major as anything else. Number three, the person who said that held a PhD from Stanford.
Of course they did. Of course.
Yeah. So it wasn't like some Yale Harvard thing. It was like somebody from, right? So
Yeah. So,
all kinds of bias.
So you're in this big role, like basically charting new territory, not only for like the people function, but for a category defining company itself, like one of the most famous companies in the world. There's not one person that doesn't know what Google is. So what was that like? Did you even realize like how big of a job you were in?
No. Oh my God, no. So again, I benefited from bias. They wanted pedigree. And so, I'd worked at fancy companies. I had a fancy MBA. There's no way I would have even been considered without that. And then I was 10 years younger than anyone else on the executive team. They weren't old either. They were in their 40s, right?
Yeah.
So I was 32 or 33 when I got the job. And, I don't think until you look back in retrospect, you really realize. But internally, it felt like the business could disappear at any moment. And it's hard to imagine now with the monopoly findings and the scale and the ubiquity of Google. But, when Facebook came along, we viewed Dropbox as a crazy strategic competitor, Airbnb, Twitter, all these companies, plus every random startup. And
then you just bought them.
When we could. Well, YouTube, DoubleClick, Google Maps, Android. Yeah. And they're still doing it, right? That's a strategy. $2.3 billion for character.ai and so on. But the other piece that was really interesting was even internally, when the business was, once we got into sort of a rhythm of forecasting and projecting things financially, and we're more structured about that, there was still a sense that the revenue could go away at any time. So, for example, every summer, business would slow down, ad revenue would slow down. And so what would happen in my world was, we'd make our hiring plans in November of the prior year. We'd ramp up recruiting. Oh, we're going to hire 10,000, 15,000 people this year. Then revenue would slow down versus projections in the summer. And the executive team would freak out and say, no, we got to pull it back, stop hiring. So meanwhile, you have tons of recruiters ramped up, all these candidates in pipeline like this. It's a factory that you're running. And then the boss says, hit the brakes. So you pull back hiring, slow down with the candidates, to close jobs that were open. And then business would pick back up in the fall. And I kid you not, this was a mystery why this was happening until 3 years after I got there. Somebody on the product team or the finance team did the analysis, were like, oh, wait, revenues slow down every summer. And it's because people go outside more. And so they're not on their computers as often. They don't click on ads as much.
It's a seasonality thing. Yeah.
But it was internally that it was this, and now with mobile, it's a little different because people are on all the time.
Right.
But to your question about, did you know, it always felt, it probably still feels like at any day it could all go away. Because on the one hand, there is kind of lock-in, but it's not lock-in in the same way that you have a refrigerator and you're going to have it sitting in your kitchen for 10 years.
Yeah. No, I think we felt very similarly at Netflix. Somebody was always nipping at our heels and it could be gone in a minute. And that sense of, I don't know, urgency just really changes things from a culture perspective. You just feel like if you have to do it today. Yeah. Because if not, somebody else is going to do it,
Yeah, and it gives you tremendous, I think, autonomy for everyone in the company, because it's this is my thing. I got to build it. I have to make sure this thing is working or it all falls apart. It's an amazing thing to get to be a part of at some point in your career.
Yeah. Bob, what were you going to say?
Oh, all I was going to say is just, and both of you have talked to all sorts of founders and executives, but to me, the hallmark of a culture, once it loses that, that's when I start worrying about it, because so Brad Bird, the Academy Award-winning director of The Incredibles, about 15 years ago, Huggy Rao and I interviewed him, and he was very animated sort of guy, literally he's like a cartoon character, and he was so relentless restlessness. That's what I want. That's why I got fired at Disney. They weren't That's why that's why I think that's why he went to Pixar, and I think it's why he left Pixar, because they lost it. And I think we all know what that is. It's just that feeling that I'm paranoid and things are never quite good enough. And when people start saying, well, after all, I'm Stanford, after all, I'm Google, and that's when I get in trouble.
Yeah,
that's when I get nervous.
It's a great point. Laszlo, what were you going to say?
I'd love your take, actually, both your takes as practitioners, but also as scientists. So, Bob, you're describing that as something you lose. Like sometimes you have it, sometimes you and then you lose it.
Or sometimes it comes and goes. But
my question is, like you. So the 101 freeway, which connects like San Francisco to the peninsula in Silicon Valley, and that famously has all these terrible billboards for startups you've never heard of. Like it's just like terrible advertising. Like the copy is bad, the imagery is bad. And I would drive when my kids were younger. We drive up and down the 101. Sometimes I'd like look at it, and I'd say this about a lot of things. I'd say like that is somebody's best work. Like, can you believe it? That this is somebody's best work? Like there's one billboard right now that says compliance that doesn't sock too much, because SOC2 is a compliance thing. But the thing is, in those like 6 words or whatever, compliance that doesn't sock too much. So it's a terrible pun.
Terrible.
But they use 3 different fonts on this damn billboard. And it's like, it hurts your eyes to look at, right? And it's somebody's. So my question is, and again, this was like Jonathan Rosenberg, who was head of product for years. He was Google's first head of product, and he's a remarkable guy and has exceptionally high standards. And one of the things I learned from him, and this is the question, is this correct? Like through his lens and looking at things like that, is it possible a bunch of people just don't even know what good looks like? That it like, they don't know. And so you're talking about the culture having it and losing it, but some of it is just innate in the people. If you like get enough of the wrong people and they don't know what good looks like, and you're doomed.
I think that there's a point there. And, I mean, you and I think know this. It's like, and if you wanted to use it through the lens of hiring, it's a bunch of people hiring people that aren't great because they've never seen what a great person looks like. And then you show them what that great person looks like. They're like, oh, that's what you mean. And then they'll never hire those sort of average people again. They'll hire the great people.
So here's the thing. Whoever did that billboard, they've seen other billboards.
Right.
Right?
That's true.
They have a TV. They have a phone. They've seen advertising, right?
This poor person. I don't know who.
And then someone approved it, right? Well,
yeah.
Maybe like
not.
Then up the chain, like somebody like is like, well, this is great. We want the world where.
So Laszlo, this is slightly off topic, but I mean the summary is I think you need both talent and persistence. And persistence when you're not talented at something is really a problem. But there's sometimes a problem, which by the way, both Google and Stanford have suffered from at various times. And I call it spending money as a substitute for thinking. And I think that's what happens with some of those billboards and and sometimes buying entire companies too. But Or maybe launching Google Glass might be an example of that.
Yeah.
But and I think you all know what I'm talking about. Netflix seemed much more disciplined about that stuff than some other companies and universities actually.
Yeah, I think if just speaking of like buying companies and things, I think Reed had done a little bit of that before Netflix at Pure, where he, was a very successful company, but it was just so painful. He's like, I'm not going to grow through acquisitions. That's not how I'm going to grow. I'm going to build. I'm not going to buy. And, I think it was just a conscious decision. Also, he never wanted a sales team again. So he was like, I'll never have a company that has a sales team. And we never had a sales team at Netflix, and we didn't really need one. We just needed marketing,
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess good that he got to learn these things, but it's not all founders, get to do multiple startups, which brings me to you because you are also a founder, of a company that I was, incredibly passionate about, still am. And the company's called Humu. Now it's part of Perceptics. But tell us like a little bit of like transition from Google CHRO to founder. What's that like?
Well, so in Silicon Valley, so now I spend time with like certainly lots of HR folks, but also as you do with VC, venture capitalists and so on. And somebody once said you should never invest in somebody coming out of, Google or Facebook or Microsoft or whatever on their first startup. Like you should let them learn the lessons about how it's different. And I was lucky because we, first of all, had great investors like you, Jessica.
Thank you.
But both my parents, and maybe it's something about being an immigrant, they were both entrepreneurs. So my dad had a job. We came to the U.S. He got a job at an engineering firm, and 2 years later, my dad's name is Paul, and he's amazing. He'd completed some big project. His boss invites him into the office, or the boss's boss, and the boss says, "Paul, I'm so impressed, blah blah. I'd like to give you this special bonus," and he gave him a check for I think like $10,000, which in 1976, that's like a year's salary, right? Yeah. That's amazing. And my dad, who was wearing a suit, because that's what you did at the time, he took the check and he put it in his coat pocket and he said, "Thank you very much. I'm resigning." and he started his own engineering firm that he built and ran for 30 years. And my mom also had her own, she was a teacher. She came here, got an MBA, had her own like very small consulting firm. And along the way, though, my parents were constantly trying things. At one point, our family was the largest importer of frozen egg rolls in California.
Egg rolls?
Frozen egg rolls. Colonel Lee's frozen egg rolls.
Okay. Who doesn't love egg rolls? I love egg rolls.
Yeah. And we weren't big. Like this was like literally you like load up the station, you take the station wagon down to like the packing house. There's a big freezer that was unloaded from a shipping crate. You load it in the back of your car and then you drive around Southern California delivering boxes of frozen egg rolls to like Chinese restaurants. But I was lucky because I had this model of when you start something, number one, it's 24/7. And, as a kid, that wasn't great. But as an adult, it was great to have learned that lesson. Number two, the responsibility is totally different. Like I thought being an executive at a big company, I felt tremendous responsibility. But when you start something, basically you make something up, right? You write a deck and then someone gives you, in our case, $10 million, like 10 years ago. And then people quit their jobs, like give up everything. We had people who took 95% pay cuts to come work for us. And the pressure to like provide for them and honor your commitment and promise to them is enormous. So completely different. And then you'll appreciate too, the last thing that was different was our first deal was a $50,000 revenue deal, which for a brand new startup, that's a good sized deal. And I got the check, like a physical check, and in the mail, and I remember looking at it going, I can't remember the last time at Google a number this small came across my desk.
Yeah.
Right? Like everyone's making millions of dollars in compensation. We're spending billions of dollars on stock. We're buying companies like $50,000. Like, so really big reorientation.
Yeah.
But it was amazing. And then so amazing I did it twice.
Yeah. So let's talk, because we were talking about this in the beginning when we were just chit-chatting before we started recording. But I want to get more into the founder, but the role that you and I played and have played in companies, being the CHRO, it has changed dramatically over the years. And, this isn't me whining and complaining. I literally think it is the hardest C-level job there is.
Yep.
And it is, one,
well, wait, having been a CEO, I can tell you it is much harder.
Yeah. And so one, you are the talent strategist, the HR strategist, compliance risk, all of those things. Then you're the chief medical officer. You're the chief diversity officer. You're the COO. And now, as we were discussing, you're the AI strategist.
Yes.
Right? And the other thing that I think is, I just want to say fucked up about this role is that everybody thinks they can do your job, right?
Yep.
Like nobody questions you. Like they don't question the chief product officer the way they question you. They don't question the CFO the way they question you. Everybody has an opinion about your strategy and what you're doing. Like, so the other C-level roles don't, they're hard, sure, but they also don't have that headwind. So what say you on this, Laszlo?
So I think you're right. I think one of the things that's structurally difficult about this job is there's no established body of knowledge that's accessible only to you, right? Like if you're the general counsel, you just say, well, here's what the law says. And everyone's like, well, you're the lawyer. If you're the CFO, you say it's a governance issue. Here's what the SAC. Oh, okay. Even if you're the head of sales, you say, well, here's what customers are saying. No one else is spending time with customers in the same way, right? If you're the head of people, everyone says, well, first of all, I'm a person too, so I know something. And number two, I'm in the same company you are. So that's a really, really big problem with it. Or that makes the job really, really difficult, exactly as you said. I think my response was you have to then rely on data and science.
Mm-hmm. So that it's really interesting. So I have a chart just for people who know. This is from your group. You know this?
That's right.
You have charts and graphs, and so basically this was your strategy, right?
So I gave those out.
Evidence.
I gave those out. I had that on the back of my laptop.
Yeah. I think that I might have gotten this from you or somebody on your team.
Probably Prasad Sethi.
Yes.
And that one actually, yeah. So I saw those, in some like rest stop somewhere on a highway or something. I was like, this is really great. And I remember I gave it to Prasad and a couple other people, and then Prasad started like.
Yeah, I'm just going to tell everybody what it says so that the listeners, they can see. So this is a
says
sticker.
We have charts and graphs to back us up. So fuck off. That's what it says.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and at Google, people would often kind of, write over the U and the C. So it was just F, because it was a more polite culture.
Oh, sorry.
Well, we're not polite on this show.
No, but that's the thing. Like, if you're in this job, I think what's going to happen is there's going to be two kind of ways to do the job. One is you need to not just rely on data, but you actually need to have a scientific method to experimenting. So, for example, there's a bunch of HR programs that we do because people like them or think they work that don't. So, for example, we talked about hiring by Pedigree. Referral bonuses. A nominal bonus is okay. It might incent a little bit, but increasing it bigger dollar numbers don't do anything. Most training actually hurts performance.
Yeah.
Right? The research on if you send a manager to training, they come back and 9 months later their teams perceive them as worse. And the reason for that is because if you run the experiment, managers get training, most training doesn't change behavior, but the team expectations have gone up. So now the manager is perceived as worse. Most corporate health initiatives, right, like exercise, 10,000 steps a day, those don't work because the people who tend to opt into those are the people who are already healthy. So companies are sitting on literally billions of dollars in spend on benefits and analytics and program training that they could repurpose to do great things for their people. And unless you have experiments, you can't prove it to the rest of your company. Because then, exactly as you said, Jessica, it's just people arguing opinions. And AI is the biggest use case for this. I posted something on LinkedIn recently because there was a firm that did a study of does AI really improve engineering productivity? And what they found, and there's a lot of drawbacks with this study that they point out, that the authors point out. But what they did was they asked engineers, and they paid these engineers, by the way, $150 an hour to participate in this experiment, right? Because you want to get good engineers, not neophytes and so on. And they asked the engineers, how much do you think this is going to improve your productivity? And they said 20%, and or 20 to 30%. And then they ran the experiment and productivity went down. And then they asked the engineers, well, how much did it improve your productivity? And they said 19%. So they, even having done the work, they still perceived it
to be
as improving their
productivity. It's like the placebo effect. Yeah.
And so somebody then posted a response and said, well, a really nice one. Like, here's what our firm is doing, and here's a blog post about all the things we did. And at the end, they said, they said, this clearly demonstrates we improve engineering productivity. But what they measured was token usage. Tokens are sort of the currency of AI. It's how you measure how much of a system you're using. Token usage and time spent with the AI tools. And so that's what they measured. And then there's a concluding paragraph, which is like, and because we saw token usage and time spent on the tools go up, it's very clear that engineering productivity improved. That's like, no, it's not.
No. Yeah.
No.
Fascinating.
That is fascinating. That's like the effectiveness of training went up because we spent more time training.
Which is, by the way, how most companies do it.
Yeah, but I mean, like, this is something that I preach about every day, especially to the CHROs that I'm coaching. And it's just like, drives me absolutely insane. Everybody keeps doing the same exact thing, even though we know it doesn't work. We know performance reviews don't tell you who is performing. We know training doesn't work. Why are we spending millions and millions of dollars every year trying to do stuff that doesn't work? And the other thing that frustrates me so much is everybody just looks at what somebody else is doing and just copies and pastes it and does it at their firm. And I mean, you know, you and I get this a lot because a lot of people want to emulate what you did at Google and a lot of people want to emulate what I did at Netflix. But you can't just do that. You have to think creatively about your workforce and your people and experiment and test and figure out what works for you.
Yeah. And that's why I think there'll be two models. There'll be some great heads of HR who adopt the scientific method, who listen to Bob, who listen to you, Jessica. And then the majority will kind of keep doing what they're doing. And the problem is, I think the field sometimes suffers from the tyranny of low expectations from their CEOs.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Like the CEOs often, I can't tell you how many CEOs I've met who are like, well, yeah, you know, my HR person's great, but, you know, I'd fire them if I had somebody better. And that's why a third of heads of HR come from outside of the field.
Yeah, it's
like
true.
With zero experience, but the CEO and the CHROs are always surprised by that.
Yeah.
Because the CEOs aren't honest.
Well,
so there's the old model.
You know, the whole thing that happened last week with that CEO and the chief people officer, that didn't help. They didn't help us.
Well,
at the Coldplay concert, I was like, of course it's the fucking chief people officer. Like, of course it is.
Of course it is. So I didn't see this at Google, but at GE, so I joined a business, and by the end, there's 30,000 people in the business, 10% of GE at the time. Just to my knowledge, and I was only there for 3 years, there were 2 HR leaders in my division alone who had relationships with CEOs of different business units within my business, and they were still there.
Crazy.
It was crazy. So,
yeah. Well, we could spend all day on this. We are running out of time, Laszlo. You need to come back because there's.
I've been biting my tongue. I have like 75 questions to ask you.
Do you want to ask one?
Me too. I have questions for you.
Do you want to ask one? Ask one.
Oh, so I guess the one question that's not fair is okay. So you've talked about the problems with it, but what's the vision for a CHRO that's powerful and effective? Like in 3 minutes, that's not fair. But like, what are 2 or 3 things that like you say, ooh, this one's good?
Well, so I'll plug my Berkeley program because we have a
go
program at Berkeley.
Bears. I'm a Yale graduate. Go Bears.
So to train transformational CHROs, but what was behind that was actually your question exactly. I think there's 3 or 4 things that are missing that you need to be transformational, that you need to be great today and given AI. One are analytical skills. So you need a basic understanding of kind of statistics and the scientific method to tell truth from fiction. You need that. Otherwise, like Jessica was saying, everyone else is going to say, well, here's my opinion, and now you're in a political fight. Number 2, really good problem structuring skills that you get from consulting. So McKinsey actually is a partner in the program. They teach that. But how do you kind of take apart a problem and approach it in a very structured way? Next time we can talk more about that. The third is there is some specific knowledge. You need exec comp. You need some finance. You need some things that actually you need to know to be great. And then the third is when you become a CHRO, it becomes really easy to build a network of other CHROs, but before that, it's really hard. Mm-hmm. So that cross-company mentorship and connectivity is really important. Yeah. But the most important thing, scientific method. That's it.
Wow. All right.
I love it. So we don't have time for the career confession today because I know you have a hard stop at the top of the hour. So, but what I'll ask from you, because we always ask, is for our guests to leave a little nugget for our listeners. Like, you know, whatever you want to gift them. So what is your, nugget that you want to leave our listeners with?
I think one of the secret underutilized weapons in our field is something Bob said before, constructive defiance.
I love it.
When you're in these jobs, you actually have unilateral power to do a tremendous amount of good, right? So yeah, you can change how hiring works. You can expand benefits coverage for people who don't have it. You can create a program to help like underprivileged kids. Like I posted something on LinkedIn about I joined the board of a nonprofit called Peninsula Bridge, which works with fourth graders through college students. And somebody responded and said, I'd love to learn more and help. And she spent time with them. And she's the head of HR of a company called Celigo. And now they're going to roll out an internship program for kids in the community to get exposed to careers who otherwise would never have that. So you can use constructive defiance to kind of just do some real good for your people and for the world.
I love it, love it, love it. Thank you, Laszlo. We have loved having you, and you're coming back. You're coming back?
That was fabulous.
So good.
And if you have me, we can start with the confession question. We can do 2.
Okay. Oh, great. We can do a whole show on them.
Confessions, yes.
Yeah.
Spicy.
Yeah.
It's really great seeing both of you and
That's
chatting
great
with you.
to see you.
Yeah, you too. I wish it was in person. Okay, thank you.